of coming up to some resolutions. Now we know here in Britain you had issues in Northern Ireland where IRA was a terrorist outfit which then resolved their differences by negotiating on the table. Do you think that the world needs to rethink the strategy on terrorism? Who is an extremist? Who is a terrorist? How do you define that?
Yes, I think that is clearly so, and if there are lessons from history, it is that yesterday's terrorist leaders often become tomorrow's world statesmen. History is littered with examples of people, and one man's terrorist is another man's freedom.
And whilst coming to see you, I just was looking at the statue of Nelson Mandela just outside Parliament.
Outside Parliament, and history is littered with such examples. What I think we've got to do, though, is within that debate stick to certain fundamental principles in terms of human rights and human dignity. Now, that isn't the province of Western countries or Western civilization, but I do think that where we are talking, we have got to talk with a certain humility, certainly, but also with a certain standards and values. I mean, one of my worries about Afghanistan and leaving Afghanistan to the mercies of the Taliban is that I do think that the treatment of women in some of those under some of those fundamentalist regimes is abhorrent, and that we have got to be willing to stand up for certain universal human rights, which include the universal human rights of women. But whether you meet those problems with military force is another matter. And it is certainly true.
The experience that we have had with Afghanistan, I mean Britain and also in Iraq, do you think that today the world is a safer place? This war on terror was aimed at curtailing terrorism, restricting it. Do you think the world has been able to restrict terrorism?
I think anybody that would claim that the world is now safer from terrorism is living in cloud cuckoo land. We've moved into a problem where terrorism is now a global phenomenon. How we meet it, we certainly don't meet it by the kind of crusader mentality that I think dominated the thinking of both President Bush and Mr. Blair. I think that took us down roads where, as I said, the very action that was supposed to be counter-terrorist actually acted as a recruiting sergeant for terrorism. That doesn't mean that...
But do you think that the policies of Mr. Blair and Mr. George Bush have changed with the new Prime Minister here in Britain and also President Obama in America? Do you think anything has changed?
Yes, I do. I think that both the rhetoric of Obama and the operational moves have changed. I think Obama certainly sees Afghanistan or the Taliban as a more fundamental threat. Whether he will negotiate as well, I don't know. I suspect so. If there are organizations and individuals willing to negotiate, I think that what we're probably learning in a very hard way at the beginning of the 21st century is that the idea of imposing Western values and Western systems by military force is counterproductive. What I don't move away from is, as I say, that there are certain universal human rights, which all countries should aspire to, and that the people within those countries should work to provide for all their citizens. You mentioned before Nelson Mandela, and why Nelson Mandela is such a beacon and an example to the world is that he has stood for those universal human rights, which I think is the basis.
It's so important to draw a distinction, because when you talk about human rights, certainly Britain and America, are torchbearers of human rights. Many of these policies or these philosophies originated here. But then when you see the war on terror, you see Guantanamo Bay, you see Abu Ghraib prison, you see some of the atrocities, the way that people have been held, they're in violation of human rights.
Absolutely, and I think that this is one of the worrying things. War conflict is a terrible brutalizer of societies. I suspect we look at our present conflicts with more horror because television shines a brighter light on it. But yes, I mean, I cannot ever believe that the so-called shock and awe bombing of Baghdad was anything other than a war crime. I think some of the treatments of prisoners went against all that we've ever argued for in terms of the Geneva Convention and the rest. And because others act with barbarity, should never be an excuse for us retreating from our principles.
Another issue which seems to be concerning Pakistan, certainly, and also Afghanistan, is the drone attacks that are happening in Pakistan. There's American drone planes that are attacking Pakistan, which is in violation of all international law. How do you look at that as a British parliamentarian?
I worry about this but I worry as well about the future of Pakistan. Pakistan has, the people of Pakistan have got to work out for themselves how they make a viable, modern, prosperous state. And if there are those who want to overthrow democracy in Pakistan, for example, and you may correct me, but from what I've read, I am told that when the Swat Valley actually had the opportunity to vote, it did not vote for extremists, the people of the Swat Valley.
Yes.
Now, does it mean that because extremists are willing to disrupt normal life and overthrow established government, that we should say, oh well, that's nothing to do with us, we leave it. Because otherwise, if you do, you have no opportunity of building the prosperous and the modern society. I also think that within Islam that there has got to be a really serious debate about the kind of society that they want. Now, if it is a total rejection of modern society, never mind Western society, but modern society, using all the intellectual and human resources within that society, that is going to have severe implications about how successful those countries are going to be.
So we're talking to Lord McNally, who's of course the leader of the Liberal Democrats in the House of Lords. We are in the House of Lords having this interview. We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the relations between Pakistan and Britain, also the journey towards democracy in Pakistan. How do the British